Alright, so something different this week. We're going to be talking Taildraggers with a couple of other guests and friends on my channel. They're going to introduce themselves to you shortly. But for those of you who do not know who I am, who haven't watched my channel before, my name's Nic Holmes. I'm an engineer by profession, and a year or so ago I decided to take up my childhood dream and learn to fly Taildraggers. I purchased a Kit Fox 4 and I went on the hunt to find a flying school that would teach me to fly in a Taildragger. But let me introduce you to everybody else and let them share their stories.
Hi there, my name is Don McMillian. I am a student pilot, a YouTuber, and I am restoring a plane I call Kit Fox 1000. It's a Kit Fox Model 3.
I'm Kristen. I'm just a simple girl. Seriously, I love my family, I love God, I love to fly. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Hi guys, my name is Kevin Palmer. Yeah, that's right, Palmer. I'm an automation engineer, which means I do control systems and robotics.
15 years ago, while I was on a date with this one guy, I told him of my dream to fly airplanes someday. And I married that man 5 months later. And they put up with me and all my crazy dreams that I have and let me become a pilot.
I chose to become a pilot because, well, I've kind of always wanted to fly airplanes, I suppose. As I've grown up, I've kind of always assumed that I would be a pilot and I would fly airplanes. It's kind of how that happened. My first ever airplane was a riding lawnmower my dad put plywood wings on. I loved that lawnmower thing for a couple months until I crashed it and broke one of the plywood wings off after hitting a tree.
And I decided to become a pilot because of Trent Palmer. Come on, we all did. No, well, I'm kind of kidding, kind of not. Trent is the one who got me into flying. He's brought me out on multiple rides and kind of shown me around on different backcountry excursions a few times over the years, and eventually I finally got to the point where it's like, all right, I'm ready to jump in on this. I'd seen that his kind of learning processes, some of the stuff he had done, and decided to get into it myself.
Hi all, my name is Taildragger. I'm currently the chief pilot for the Zululand anti-poaching airwing. We conduct aerial surveillance and reactions for the Project Rhino reserve members in Zululand, South Africa. We work in conjunction with private security firms as well as the South African Police Service in the war against rhino poaching. I've been flying tail aircraft my whole life. I've logged over 1,500 hours of tail wheel time. I was very fortunate enough to have my father instruct me on his very own J3 Cub. He did my PPL for me. Ever since then, it's sparked a passion for tailwheel and more specifically Cub aircraft. The majority of my hours are on J3 Cubs, Super Cubs, Savage Cubs, and Carbon Cubs.
So why did I choose to fly a Taildragger? That's the same reason. I want to be able to take off short, land short. I want to be able to get into places that aren't paved runways, land off airstrip. Also, I feel that it's a safer type of airplane. If something were to happen, if the engine were to go quiet, having practice in those types of off-airport landings is going to be very beneficial.
So I was asked, why did I learn to fly in a Taildragger? Well, honestly, it was completely by accident. I was always sitting at home and I would see these cool little yellow airplanes flying above my house, and it sparked that dream that I had of learning to fly one day. And I mean, it'd been like decades, since I had this dream, and it just like sparked that fresh again. And so I looked it up, and I live in a small town way outside the city. It's just a dinky little town. And who would have known there's a flight school in my little town of Hood River, Oregon. And so I went there one day and told them I wanted to learn to fly. They signed me up for an intro flight. The school is TAC Aero, and I had no idea they were like the backcountry tailwheel flight school like ever. They're the best, and they happen to be right here, right by my house. So completely by accident did I learn to fly in a tail wheel, I'd hit the jackpot. They have awesome airplanes, tons of little yellow cubs that I saw flying around, and awesome instructors, and so there you go.
Well, I learned to fly Taildraggers because in September of last year, mostly, I actually got a Kit Fox, which is a Taildragger, and I knew that I needed to get my Taildragger endorsement so I'd be able to fly it. So I found an instructor who lived about an hour south of us, and we started taking lessons. I started going taking lessons there about once every week, and started working towards my Taildragger endorsement.
Well, flying tailwheel, it gives you a behind-the-scenes, full access pass to this insane backcountry experience, and you just get to escape the earth and the tangles of the world and just go off on your own. I don't need an airport. I don't need pavement. I just need a fairly flat-ish area, and I can land an airplane. How cool is that? It's just the best.
What excites me most about flying Taildraggers, I really love the fact that most Taildraggers can take off and land in places that nosewheel planes can't, and get out, climb, the higher climb rates, the STOL capabilities. Like, I go see my shirt here. My style is STOL. That really is my style. That's my style of flying. Short takeoffs and landings, ranch roads, rural airstrips. That's my kind of flying, low and slow.
I guess it'd say the adventure. It's always going to be somewhere different, or I guess it's not always going to be, but there's always going to be different factors. There's always going to be different wind or different things going on. So even if it is the same landing that you've done before in the same strip, there's always going to be another factor. So there's always that adventure of landing in a new place. What scares me the most about flying Taildraggers, and why?
Flying Taildraggers does not scare me. Maybe it should, but stick and rudder skills are so important.
I guess I would have to say it's that ground loop, because it's always right there. It's always kind of possibly around the corner. You never know.
Well, at first what scared me most about flying Taildraggers, I was always so concerned that on takeoff I would push that stick forward and I'd hit the prop on the ground and totally airplane. That was my first fear, my first major fear, and I held that fear up until very recently when I went flying with Levi Nogus, and he showed me he had to be strapped into the plane with the engine off, of course, and he went out and picked up the tail by the handles and picked it up until the prop just touched the ground. And he showed me that you really have to push that nose over, at least on a Kit Fox, to touch the tail to the ground. And that kind of dispelled that fear for me.
I fly Kit Fox 4s mostly, and they are very short coupled, very ground loopy. They want to spin on you. Definitely had a couple times where I've lost steering on landing, and if I wasn't ready on those brakes, I don't know what would have happened. You got to be on your feet for sure. Stay on your toes when you're flying a Taildragger, and especially a short coupled, smaller, light airplane.
I do live in fear of towered airports, though. It has nothing to do with Taildraggers, but I learned at a non-towered airfield, and so I'm just terrified of towered airfields. Okay, so they asked, what do you think that a Taildragger can teach you that flying a nose dragger cannot? I had no idea the difference between a nose wheel aircraft and a tailwheel aircraft when I first started flying. So I'm completely ignorant of this whole subject. I can't answer the question. I did my entire private pilot's training in a tailwheel airplane, and I can't answer this question. So let's move on.
Okay, that would definitely be the finesse and the skill, and a lot more of the flying by the seat of your pants, being really aware, really focusing on what is outside the airplane, specifically when you're taxiing, what is outside the airplane, where you're going, and making the airplane go where you want it to go and not settling for any less. That is definitely the biggest lesson flying Taildraggers has taught me that flying nose wheels didn't, is being aware of your surroundings, looking outside the airplane, not focusing on the instruments on the inside, looking outside, keeping my feet on those rudders, and really understanding the correlation between what the rudders actually do, what the movements the rudders do to the rest of the airplane. My first couple lessons in 172, when I was first starting flight training, I was using too much rudder, because I had heard, that you steer an airplane with your feet, you need a lot of rudder inputs, and I was thinking about taildraggers. Back then, I still didn't know a ton about airplanes. And my instructor actually told me to ignore the rudder pedals, like pretend they weren't there for my first couple of lessons. He took over the taxiing until the takeoff and all that kind of stuff. But with the taildraggers, I mean, from the first minute you start that engine, you have to stay on those rudder pedals, and you can't let the airplane get away from you. You can't settle for the airplane. Oh, the airplane's starting to drift off a little to the right. That's okay, kind of thing. You have to keep that airplane in line and make it do what you actually are intending for it to do.
So I guess if I had to say that flying a taildragger taught me anything about myself, it's that I always am going to keep being a student no matter what. Even though I'm done with school and I have my degrees, and I still just want to learn. And so that's what the taildragger has taught me, is that I just want to keep learning more things. Taildragger flying being one of them, and then I really want to master my skills in that plane.
The lesson that flying a taildragger has taught me about myself originally was that I am not very good at multitasking. I am definitely improving, but multitasking and focusing on looking outside, making S-turns, make sure you're not going to hit something, keeping those rudders, keeping the tail behind you, radio and all this kind of stuff. It's definitely a significantly higher workload flying with a taildragger than it is with a nose wheel. But that is definitely making me a better pilot, just a more conscientious, a more aware pilot, a more aware person.
I learned I only want a backcountry airplane that affords me access to all the fantastic bush flying experiences that there are. And there's a zillion. There's so many places and things and just sights to see and places to land and places where cars can't go, or a nose wheel airplane. Maybe, okay, I know that's a debate, whatever. You can debate it. But for that reason, I learned I'm definitely a taildragger pilot for life. That's it.
So Nic approached me and asked me a question. He said, if someone told you that they wanted to learn to fly in a taildragger, but flight schools have told them that they need to learn to fly a nose wheel aircraft first before converting to tailwheel, what would I say to them? Well, it's pretty simple. Find a good flight school. Doing initial training on tailwheel aircraft will help your stick and rudder skills tremendously as you go forward. Then converting to a tricycle aircraft is very easy. That being said, tailwheel flying was a dying art 10 years ago, and trying to find a flight school that is both a tailwheel aircraft as well as tailwheel instructors on their books is relatively difficult. It's due to the likes of the Flying Cowboys with their social media, companies like Taildragger, and all of this that are bringing tailwheel flying back, putting it back onto the map. It's picked up drastically in the last few years, which is awesome.
Okay, well that's basically the same thing I first heard when I started flying lessons.
It's not a lie that tail gears are harder to fly.
Well, I'm sure it would be way easier and take way less time to learn in a nose wheel, so I've heard.
But if you've learned in a nose gear and then you transition to a tail wheel, even if you do your tail wheel transition training with a good instructor, you've just got ingrained habits of a nose wheel.
And I discovered some videos on YouTube about taildraggers, like Trent Palmer's YouTube videos about the kit box. I wanted to learn to fly in those, but he told me that I could learn to fly in the 172 and then convert to taildraggers later, even later on in my instruction before I finished up my private pilot's license. And I would say is that if you have the opportunity and you have the ability and you could find somebody who has a taildragger, go for it. Go and fly in that taildragger and get lessons in the taildragger. Get your taildragger endorsement. Solo in a taildragger.
I see all these people who've had their pilot's license for years and go get their tailwheel endorsement, and I guarantee I've got better stick and rudder skills all day long.
If your instructor or your flight school is unwilling to deal with that, then maybe you should look for a different instructor, a different flight school. You can go talk around and You know, find someone who is willing to teach you in what you want to learn. At the end of the day, it's your money, right? It's your time. You're the student. Learn what you want to learn. And if you want to learn to fly a Taildragger, then find someone who will teach you how to fly a Taildragger.
So yeah, find somebody with a Taildragger endorsement who's a CFI and go out there and get some lessons in a Taildragger.
I wouldn't change a thing. I'm so happy I went to a tailwheel flight school and learned that intense rudder dance that you have to do all the way down to shutdown of the airplane. It's all I know, and I'm just so grateful I didn't have to go. I started off really hard, so maybe if I fly a nose wheel aircraft, it will seem easy. I don't know, but I hear the other way around is brutal, going from nose wheel to tail wheel. I don't know, but I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. I recommend it. Stick it through. It might be a little harder. It might take a little longer. It might be a little more frustrating, but stick it through and you'll be so proud of yourself. And people will be like, what the what? You learned on a Taildragger? So it's cool.
And then a second question from Nick. Why should pilots new and old learn to fly a Taildragger? Flying a tailwheel aircraft is an art. It's where one becomes part of the aircraft, not just the operator. The saying by L. Ray Jepson comes to mind. There's a big difference between a pilot and an aviator. One is a technician, the other is an artist that's in love with the flight. Tailwheel flying teaches you to always be ahead of the aircraft. One needs to anticipate where the aircraft is going to be, not just where it is. The stick and rudder skills are crucial skills that is slowly being lost to automation in the 21st century. Tailwheel flying puts you back to basics and puts you in charge of your own aircraft. But most importantly, it's just a lot of fun.
I love my Taildragger and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world right now.
So yeah, so that's why I fly a tailwheel. That's why I love Taildraggers, and why I believe I will always have at least one Taildragger.
So anyways, thanks Nick for asking me to do this. Everybody take care, make sure you fly safe. Keep in mind, I am not an instructor. Always listening to your instructor. They're the ones who know how to teach you, so don't take anything I say over what your instructor tells you.
I really wanted to do this outside, but it is insanely windy. It is absolutely crazy. Yeah, I must say big shout out and thanks to everybody who contributed to this project on why we fly Taildraggers. Huge shout to Ian Waghorn, who a great South African bush pilot who we are losing to greener pastures and greater backcountry experiences. Ian is off to fly for TAC Aero in Hood River, Oregon. So I'm sure you'll see him around on TAC Aero's YouTube channel and their Facebook posts and stuff. Keep a lookout for Ian. He's an amazing pilot. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with what I think to be the most inspirational story to come out of this project. Listen to the story. Have a look at that smile at the end of the story. And if that does not inspire you to get out there, experience the backcountry, live the adventure, and fly Taildraggers, I don't know. No, then there's no hope. So check out Kristen's story coming up now, and give us a thumbs up for Taildraggers. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Check out everybody else's channel. Go subscribe to them. Check them out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. All the links are below, and we'll see you next week.
Well, okay, here's the deal. A few weeks ago, I got to fly a Cub Crafters new Carbon Cub FX2 tailwheel airplane with 29-inch bush tires and like crazy shocks, and it makes you feel so good about every landing, like you're just landing on pillows. And we went down into this canyon in between all these like rocky cliffs, and there's the Deschutes River running through it, and just a luscious meadow, and just, you know, there's some rocks over here and there's some flowers over here, and we found a nice little, you know, little path that we could put that airplane down on the ground, and we got her down. We got out of the airplane, and just the sound of that rushing river going through, and just the sights, and just peering up these like steep cliffs, you know, mountainsides. And we got our fly fishing pole out, and I learned to fly fish that day. And that's cool. That's why you should learn to fly a tail dragger.